Wonderful questions. Uh, very relevant, very important. But I'll be a bit brief because actually I can speak for whole days on it. Yeah, and I love speaking about it. And besides, I love the sound of my own voice. So please forgive me if I'm going to shorten it, come superficial and shallow. It's not that. It's simply pretending to be a Democrat, saying everybody should have the voice and so on. So, okay, let's begin with sketch. Let's begin with the second question and then go to the first one to sketch the problem. Axioms, hypotheses, definition, principles of derivation, all these are required in mathematics, in logic, in all sciences. Do we need that? Or do we have it in social sciences? First, do we have it in social sciences, except for very small domains like social choice theory, rational choice theory, game theory? If you forget them, or using of statistics in political science and economics and so on, our social sciences are not like that. Because if they were, they would not be what I call ideologies. But should they be? No question about it. If it is knowledge, see, to me, science is simply an example of knowledge, the best we have today, then social sciences would have to take this form. Assumptions, premises, derivations, axioms, and so on and so forth, and ways of testing the theories in the world. So without doubts, that is where we have to go. And as I said in the beginning of my talk, that is how you judge. Is what the research program from Ghent and elsewhere, is it going in the direction of knowledge? These are the criteria you must use to test as much as other theories. So yes, it should. This is a simpler issue in one sense. But the first one, English, Sanskrit, and experience. Extremely huge, extremely deep question. Let me slice it this way. See, most of you probably would agree or have said that there are a lot of Sanskrit words which we cannot translate into English. And many people call them Indic categories. And because I'm a philosopher, I dislike sloppy use of words. Indic category is one such, but I won't go there. That's only when I have to beat somebody, I will say, Indic category is and so on. But now I don't want to beat anybody as yet. So anyway, the problem is, okay, we do realize that many Sanskrit words cannot be translated into English. Fine. But we must reverse the question. Are we able to understand English words? There are two elements. One question that Chaitra said, can we find words? Can we coin words in Sanskrit, in Kannada, in Hindi, Urdu, whatever, to translate English words? Well, up to a point we have done it. But that's not the issue. It's not a translation issue, because the question is, do you understand? Because these words, now let me take some words from English. State, sovereignty, social classes, democracy. Just, we can go on. Law, constitution. So these words, we have words. Constitution, that is Samvidhana. Democracy, that's Praja, Prabhutva. We have words, yes. But these words in English or in German or in French are part of a theory, whether they're scientific or not, which means they have technical, very clear technical meanings. If we don't understand that theory, we cannot translate it. Take one simple example, not a complex one, of soul and so on, democracy. Every one of us thinks that India is a big democracy. If you disagree with the current government, you say it's not democracy, it's majoritarian rule, whatever the hell it means, it doesn't matter. You are a Marxist, you say this is fascism. And if you're not dead, you see there's bloody chaddis. I've been called chaddi, by the way. I'm known in the Marxist circles as a chaddi. Chaddi means shorts. You know, the RSS people wear shorts. I'm called chaddi. Fine. But I always had this problem. How did I know the color of the chaddi I wear, my underwear? I'm supposed to wear khaki. But actually, no, I'm not wearing khaki. So how the hell do they know that? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So let's take democracy. Praja, Prabhutva. Now, there is something very, very extraordinary if people tell me that they understand what Praja Prabhutva means and what democracy means as words. Forget the theories. Because there is something extraordinary in Indian culture. One absent fact. Let me bring it up. The Greeks and the Romans, they had slaves. How do we know? Amongst other things, there was slave market. People were bought and sold as slaves. There was slavery in certain periods in Europe after Christian thing. Anyway, they transformed the whole continent into slaves. How do you know? That slave market. Now, Indians are supposed to have, according to Marxists, we also have slavery, feudalism, capitalism, and we go to socialism and dictatorship of the proletariat and so on. But everybody is, today, for example, there are radical groups in India who say the oppressed caste, the depressed classes are used as slaves. For 2,000 years, they were slaves to the Brahmins. Now, this is the story. And therefore, today we have Praja Prabhutva. But there's one absent fact in Indian culture and society. What is it? There is no record of market for slaves in India. If there were slaves, how come? There was no slave market, no record of any such thing, whereas Europe had it, Middle East had it, Romans and the Greeks had it. But in fact, if you look at Indian texts a bit deeply, you discover something very strange. In India, there is no idea that human beings rule human beings. Nor even is there an idea that human beings rule products and properties on earth. Human beings do not rule. You can see it even to this day in India, ordinary conversations. They criticize you for acting, I don't know the Hindi thing. They say, don't, you, chalai sodo. Hey, how do you say it in Hindi?
Chalai sodo.
Adhikara chalai sodo. Oh, it doesn't matter, forget it. So we have an expression which says, who the hell are you to use authority on me? Yeah.
Raj karna, adhikar chala. Raj karna.
Okay. Even in Gita, when it talks about adhikara, it says, karmanyeva adhikaraste. That means you have the authority to perform actions. But there is nowhere in an Indian tradition, it's not possible to conceptualize that human beings can rule human beings. Not possible. Gods don't rule us. Yeah? So how can human beings rule human beings? The stories are full of it. Rishis telling the gods to bugger off. Vishwamitra said, if you don't send Trishamkota, Swarga, I am going to create 3 worlds. So immediately gods came, fell at his feet and said, please don't do that. It's going to create deep chaos and deep confusion. And he said, okay, I won't do it. Provided give me some 100 apsaras or something. And he got apsaras, so he didn't do it. In other words, our stories are full of that. Now, why is this important? If there is no possibility that human beings could rule human beings, the idea that Praja Prabhutva is nonsense. Absolute nonsense, because No human being can rule over human beings. When does democracy make sense? What is the question of democracy? Why should I obey the laws that another human being makes? They say that is because you have decided that these people should make the laws. Why should I obey the king? Because divine kingship says that he should rule. Why should I obey because this king? Because Roman Catholic Church says that he is the king, and so on and so on and so on. We just don't have that in our culture. Question: how in God's name do we understand democracy at all? We say Prabhutva. Take the Sanskrit word. Do we know the difference between a Prabhu and a Vibhu? Why is it important? Atma is the Vibhu of body. King is a Vibhu. But neither Atma does not interfere with the body. Atma does not act according to our traditions, according to culture, according to our understanding. So Vibhu is somebody who has authority in one sense, but cannot rule. That is Vibhu. Raja, another name for king, is Vibhu. Of course, we call him also Prabhu. So, when our kings don't rule over us, they never ruled over us in our history. Because leaving this king, going to another kingdom was not treason. If king rules a subject and the subject doesn't obey the king, it is treason, punishable by death even today. In Britain, in Europe, in America. Treason. And that's why the laws of treason that we have in India was made by the British. We have no example of treason, death by treason, in Indian Dharma Shastra, Dharma Sutra texts. We just don't have it. To summarize, we would not know what it is if human beings ruling over fellow human beings is unknown to us. What would Praja Prabhutva mean? What does therefore democracy mean? Therefore, what does theories of democracy mean? What is sovereignty? What are rights? We do not, we may have words. Rights is hakku. Hakku is not English. Here it is coming from Persian, Urdu, Hindi language. But it doesn't matter. Hak. So, but it doesn't matter to us. So, in other words, when we use words, we use words. But we don't understand at all. But the problem with us is, we think we know English. We don't. Most ordinary words, we don't know the meaning. And my favorite, but I want to elaborate on it, you have heard of the word justification. Justify yourself. We think we know what it means. I'm willing to bet, I am not as rich as Hari Kiran, I'm sure he will lend me the money, $1 million. But nobody here in this group of 500 would be able to tell me what justification is. Even if they lived in America for 40 years or in Europe for 55 years. They don't, not only that, they'll agree with me because every time they use the word justification, people in Europe and America have got angry with them about how they use it. We don't know what it means. But you're all experts in English, no? When you say you don't know English, any number of people, oh, I studied English in Cambridge. I was taught English in Oxford. Oh, I went to St. Stephen's. I think as though that teacher saying, yeah, grammatically, syntactically, you may use the words correctly. But my friend, doesn't mean you understand English because a lot of these words in English are coming from stories, whether it's the Bible, whether it's theology, whether it's political science, coming whose notions we just don't understand. Conceptually don't understand, forget experientially. So our problem is not Indic categories cannot be made, translate in English and build a list of some 150 Sanskrit words and say, only use those Sanskrit words because that will defend us from colonialism and colonial thought. You have to be a genius to tell such stupid things and get civic awards. But we have lots of them in India. Because in India, we have a very special procedure. If you tell lies all the time, you get Bharata Ratna. If you talk stupid things, you get Padma Shri and Padma Bhushana. Just look at the bloody list of the people who got it. Yeah. Anyway, so therefore, kindly don't propose me to Bharata Ratna. Anything less, I won't even accept. But Bharata Ratna, I'm not, because I don't like. Anyway, so a problem of understanding English language is not a problem of language, but of knowledge. Not a question of translating of democracy, sovereignty, right, etc., are not translation issues, they are knowledge issues. Same way, translating Sanskrit words into English is not translation issue, is a knowledge issue. And exactly the way we do it, English-speaking people are also intelligent. We use words like electricity, switch, train. Well, they say Pandit, Karma, and so on. They also use English words, Sanskrit words in English. So that is not a problem to anybody except those who are striving to get Bharata Ratna. Okay, or Padma Bhushan, or Padma Bhushan. So the translation is not a translation problem. It is a knowledge problem. If it's a knowledge problem, if we cannot understand conceptually, level of knowledge, what is being said in European languages, which means it is because we don't have that experience in our culture. Therefore, do not see, please, as translation issues. No, they're knowledge issues, each one of them, and we don't have experiences. We have no experience of what it means to rule, or man ruling over man. Your father does not rule over you any more than your guru rules over you, any more than your king rules over you. Take away that notion of ruling, and therefore we have no slavery. Where it is possible for man to rule over man, slavery is a possibility. In India, it hasn't occurred, will not occur, because we don't have that idea at all, or we don't have the structures, we don't have a culture. So, summarizing, it's a beautiful question. What is the relation between language, experience, and knowledge? I'm glad the question is raised because they're very deeply connected. What appears as language issue is a knowledge issue and experiential problem. What do you say? Anybody wants to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would like to add something.
You're not qualifying for Bharata Ratna, I hope.
Well, secretly I am. I mean, for quite a number of years, so I'll do my best. See, I'd like to say something about what happens when knowledge issues are confused for translation issues, in both directions. One is secularism, issue of secularism. In India, people talk about secularism in all kinds of ways, and there have been attempts to translate it. And the most famous one is Nehru's Dharma Nirapekshata. Now, there's a kind of unholy mixture that comes into being when you start doing that. No one understands why secularism, secular state was such a huge issue in Europe, and why it became so important within Europe to separate the state from religion, because if the king or the state endorsed a particular religion, the subjects were expected to also follow that religion, and everyone else was persecuted. And it's within a framework of discussing religion, a Christian theological framework, but that's not very relevant right now, where this distinction between politics and religion became incredibly important. Now bring that to India, where this is not an issue at all. I mean, kings could follow any kind of tradition, and their subjects could follow any number of other traditions, and there was no conflict. What Sarika told us about the Jews is an excellent example. In Europe, it was a huge problem that people would follow another authority than their king or their state, and conflicts came into being. In India, that conflict never came into being. So when you translate secularism without understanding what it means, why politics needs to be distinguished from religion, you introduce some Sanskrit word, you get well, statements that no one can understand, basically. Now, the other direction, claiming that there's these non-translatables and that we should use native categories and Sanskrit categories, and if not, we'll never understand Indian culture. I want to send you a sentence. I'll do it through this chat function. So I'll just copy paste it. I'd like you to read that sentence. I've just sent it. It's a long sentence, so I'll give you some time.
Yeah.
So it's now in this chat box window.
Are you, just 1 second, Jacob. Are you trying to get some Indian students to do doctorate with you on this?
No.
I suspect very deep motives there.
I hope not. I hope not.
Okay.
See,
you have to post it to general. You have posted it to only panelists.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay.
No, all panelists.
No, now it's come. All panelists and attendees.
Yeah. Hurricane did it. Yeah.
See, why I'm posting that sentence, not for you to try and understand it, but just to show that this claim that there's these non-translatables, so we should keep using Sanskrit terms, and if not, we cannot understand any traditions. It's reinventing the wheel. Because this quotation is from 1870s. It's Theosophical Society, people like Madame Blavatsky, Annie Besant, and then Indians reproducing what they said. And they also said, we have to keep these Sanskrit terms, we cannot translate them into Western languages or into English. Now, the sentences that result, as Balu likes to put it, they make your brain freeze. You try to understand the sentence and your brain just collapses immediately. So if you confuse what are knowledge issues with translation issues, this kind of, it's to me, it really looks like an unholy mixture where you become more and more puzzled the more you try to understand it. And for us Westerners, initially we think Indian traditions must be very obscure, esoteric, opaque, and either think there's something wrong with us or something wrong with Indian traditions. But in any case, there cannot be knowledge. If this is what they're all about, and your brain freezes trying to understand them, that's the kind of problem that comes into being.
So,
okay, I have to say something. Yeah.
Yeah. Ladies first.
What I wanted to add to what Jacob is saying is that the question of language experience and knowledge, it's something that must be accessible in your daily life. It's not an academic exercise. It's not something that you have to do deep, enormous studies about. I mean, if you know gravity, you know what happens. You drop something, it falls down. You know it's because of gravity. You learn it as a way to understand the world. Irrespective of whether you learn the English word or some other Kannada word or Hindi word, it helps you make sense of the world. Whereas what happens when it comes to Indian notions or Indian texts or what India has produced, it becomes something completely inaccessible, which is only for the experts. Whereas we have to live our daily lives, we have to talk about bhavanas and manas and nemadi and what is happening to us and how do we feel, how do we go about in the world, and we're not able to do anything with it because it's become so esoteric. Yeah, that's why
I will pick up the thread from, actually it's good that you spoke first because I can continue. But the problem of experience, because there is a deep relationship between the language to experience. And so recently in last 3-4 months, I had a chance to do a series of workshops in India in different corners, from all rural to Chandigarh, like high metropolitan place, everywhere. And we had one common task given to students. And the kind of task that we did had representation from all strata of the society. The first question was given, are you religious? And invariably everybody translated religion as dharma. Okay, some usage little bit different, etc. So I asked them to keep that translation with them. After a point in time, I came back and asked them, okay, now translate to your local language. Are you irreligious? Now, when they were actually translating it, almost 80% of them had difficulty in translating it as adharma. Because if religion is dharma, irreligious had to become adharma. And they had great difficulty in translating it into adharma, and some people did. So what did we do? We went and asked them, give an example. Think about an example of an adharmi in Indian culture. So we took the local politician name. So we asked, is Yediyurappa adharmi? No, I can say Brashta, but I can't say adharmi. So like this, it goes on. Do you want to call Ravana adharmi? No, I can't call Ravana. He's a great Shiva Bhakta. He did tapas, etc. Hiranyakashipu adharmi. So they couldn't. And I shifted the question a little bit invariably. Do you want to call Hitler an adharmi? And invariably answer was, oh yes. I mean, he has committed genocide. I mean, he had to be adharmi. Okay. Now, but look at the contrast here. Now, the adharma, the word, is so familiar to us, but they couldn't pick up an example of a person to connect to and say who is an adharmi within our own tradition, which they're familiar, irrespective of their metropolitan, etc. Now, the moment you bring in Hitler, so their reference is, the moment you bring in Hitler, they resonate and talk about Hitler could be called adharmi. Now, think about it. We so easily use religion as dharma, in one shot. But the moment you convert this into talk about irreligiousness, then you can't talk about adharma, because you go and say, you go and ask somebody, are you adharmi? They will slap you, literally. Any Indian would, that is the worst thing that anybody would get to call it. So there is this deeper relationship, the way the language that we use and to the experience, we have it. And it deals with the knowledge about this world. Now, what we do is, in the name of this big storytelling, Sanskrit non-translatable, as if this is one unique property of the Sanskrit language, which is not. Because you take English, you take German, you can talk about series of non-translatable. And actually, we make joke of ourselves by actually trying to make a table thumping claim using Sanskrit as non-translatable. That's why it becomes a problem. So that's the first part. And second part, is also, by talking this way about language, there is this claim that a number of people want to push, that we can teach knowledge in Indian languages, and they wanted to teach natural sciences in Indian languages. Now, as Balu has already previously pointed out, that these natural science, theories of natural sciences grew over a period of time. There are specific theories within which the conceptual repertoire has been built, and there is a lot of energy that has been built. So you have resources within the language to talk about and deal with these theories. And if you want to do it in any Indian language, we have to do a range of preparation to transform Indian language capable of talking about theories of economics, theories of physics, theories of ethics, etc. So it is much more easier to actually use English and start teaching it. So even that kind of argument doesn't help us. So therefore, there is an extraordinary ignorance that we have about the function of language and its relationship with experience and knowledge.
Chaitra, I have a question. You probably experienced it as well. When you talk about religious and irreligious, when you talk about the religion of the Hindus, it usually is going to the temples, doing puja, I don't know, having a tulsi plant in your house. I mean, these kind of things are what the sort of things that people list when you talk about whether you're religious or not. If being irreligious is the contrast set, then it means not doing these practices, not doing puja or not going to the temple. But at the same time, religious is also translated as dharma. Then you would have to say, by consequence, that people who don't do puja or don't go to the temples would have to be adharmis, which makes absolutely no sense. Do you notice something like that in the conversations that you have?
Yeah, on the one later experiment where with a small group, I tried doing it, and they came up with horror, literally. No, oh my God, I don't go to temple, but I am not adharmi. I mean, this is the immediate sharpest response. I mean, so even the youngest of the lot that I have encountered in dealing with, calling adharmi generates such a repulsion, That no, something, so the grossly wrong that I can't be called adharmi. The moment you say, if you're listing out this, I did that detailed exercise as well with a small group and saying, well, okay, are you religious? I am dharmi. So list out the activities that you could call it as religious. So then doing puja, doing sandhya vandana, like this, the list goes on. And they're saying not doing this becomes irreligious, meaning adharmi. Would you want to say, no, I don't do sandhya vandana, but I am not adharmi. So they run into this crazy, I mean, you should see the reaction and the horror. Actually, that should actually illustrate in saying that it actually deforms, something that happens in us, and everybody resonates with the idea, even though mindlessly we use religion for dharma, etc. But when you actually start making an inquiry of this kind, you start realizing.
Yeah, but just one sec. In a way, you're going in a direction which is not leads to very conclusions which are not correct. What I want to say is this. See, one thing that a lot of people say is that dharma is a very complex idea which you don't understand. It means many things. And there's another thing about Indians. If you talk like that for 3 hours, how wonderful dharma is because it means so many different things to so many people, you become the Chief Justice of a High Court. How do I know that? Because I heard a Chief Justice of the High Court giving 3-hour speech in front of foreign colleagues. I felt so embarrassed, but it doesn't matter. Only thing he said, dharma means so many things. The greatest contribution of India is the word dharma. Really, people, it's worse than contribution 0 as the greatest contribution to India is to say a word which can mean any damn thing if you like is the greatest contribution of India to world culture. Now, but this is an important point for the following reason. Even though we may not know what dharma means, we will ask Rama Joyce, who was the Chief Justice, to tell us that. If you have 3 hours, go to him and he'll give you 500 citations from Sanskrit. Even if we don't know what dharma means, here is something very strange. We can use, without problem, words like adharmi and so on. That means it's not true to say we don't know what it means. If you did not, how is it possible, you say, especially for Karnataka people, they will know it. Siddaramaiah, ex-chief minister, Yediyurappa, present chief minister, they are not only brashtas, they are papis, everybody knows it. And that's why they get elected, by the way, but they are not adharmis. Every Kannadiga will tell you that. Same thing for NTR, MGR, Jayalalitha, you name it. We will not call them adharmis. But we know who to call adharmis also. That means we know what it means. Otherwise, at least what it refers to. So, problem is not of translating religion as dharma or not knowing what the word means. We do know up to a point how to use it. The problem doesn't come from there. The problem comes from the fact that you have these intellectuals, so-called intellectuals, who tell us nonsense both about dharma and about religion. And the middle-class people, English educated, so-called, believe it very seriously. Dharma is a very subtle concept. You know what scientists would say to that? Dharma is a meaningless term, you can't use it, kick it off. Because a term which doesn't do any work in its theory should be dismissed. So and that's why Indians are made fun of, and with this Rama Joyce people like that give speeches for 3 hours on dharma. The Europeans hang their head down in shame and I want to disappear into the ground. Anyway, but somebody is asking here a very good question. It gives an example, some Buddha, it talks about non-dualism. He says, attracted to Advaita because of its non-dualism. He says, whether that means, now I'm citing him, me and my father are one. He's citing from the Gospel of John. Whether that is true. And of course, people got shocked. I have had this experience in a different way, any number of times. Just one small example. The other day, about a few months ago, I was reading a translation of Upanishads by these number of Swamis. They populate the American marketplace like nobody's business. They all come from the Himalayas. They have some mysterious gurus. So they set up ashrams, build blogs, and they're allowed to do that. They also make lots of money. Fine, no problem. One of the guys writes about in forget which Upanishad, first discussion about Atman, where Yajnavalkya is telling his wife Maitreyi, he's about to die. And he says, you know what, Maitreyi, I'm going to die anyway. So I'm going to tell you the secret of Atma, which is very important, which will make you immortal. Now, Maitreyi didn't ask the question, I'm sure she had. She said, if Atma, you have the knowledge of Atma, Atma makes you immortal, why the hell are you dying? You should remain immortal. You're not, you're going to die. Therefore, she should have said something like that. I'm sure she said it because she asked me another question of a different time, same time. She said, if I learn about Atman and I get the land you give me, would I be able to enjoy it all through, not just my life, throughout, till the end of the world? So my Yajnavalkya says, no, unfortunately, it's not possible because you're also going to die. Then why the hell do you have to know about Atman then? Why do you need the land? She asked in a very serious way. And then comes the following thing, which I want to talk about. He says, you love something because of your love for Atman. That sentence repeats itself in the dialogue. Very precious, beautiful dialogue. You love something because you're in love with Atman. You love your wife, not because she's your wife, but because Atman, and so on and so on. So Atman is the reason why you love. And different people translate differently. For example, one of the great acharyas says, you love money because you love Narayana. Honestly, I still haven't come across a single bhagavad who says, I love $1 billion because I love Narayana. Or I love my wife because I love Narayana. Why do you like Porsche? Or because I love Narayana. You see, nobody talks like that. And only given in Madhva's time, of course, they had no Porsche, no $1 million, but still they would not have spoken that way. But Madhvacharya, great Acharya, one is respected, so you can follow it and think that. But that's okay. Then there is these Himalayan gurus who go to America to make money. He writes like this. Loving Atman means you are uniting yourself. That's why I took the example of this unity and Advaita. You're uniting yourself with the Supreme, and that is the reason why you love your wife, you love your car, you love your children, etc., etc. And people find it extremely profoundly, it's very profound, they say, because that is union of the divine with the individual. And Yajnavalkya's teaching is the secret of Atman, which is to unite ourselves with the divine, Atman with Paramatma. So I asked, that the day I was asking, asked a friend of mine, he says, I want my sons to go to that school. So I said, hey, let's apply Yajnavalkya to this. You want your children to go to that school because what? You feel one with the school? You are the same as the school? Do you like the car because you feel one with the car? If you feel all that, you know what we normally do? We send them to mental hospitals. They are not jnanis yet. If somebody stands up and says, I feel one with what? Inflation, then they say something is wrong with that guy, give him some medication. Doctor, there's something wrong. He doesn't know who he is. Now, why is this important? People, if this is the sublime knowledge that India has produced, we are a bunch of morons, imbeciles. Now, Yajnavalkya is not an imbecile. Upanishad is not for morons. So this example that they gives, me and my father are one. If you are Advaita, because there is unity in cosmos between Atman and Brahman, if somebody tells you that, my suggestion is don't go to Shankara to find out what it means. Kindly take him to the nearest mental hospital. Our story is not that. Why am I saying all this? Because when these people say these things, they're making serious knowledge claims about the world, about human beings, about our psychology. Don't reduce it to bullshit about the sense of unity with the cosmos. There's another guy, one sentence and then I'll stop, with the man who is the new age bugger in America.
Deepak Chopra.
Deepak Chopra.
Right.
Deepak Chopra. So there was a meeting between Deepak Chopra on one side and Sadhguru, wonderful people. Because Sadhguru thinks you should not read Bhagavad Gita because if you read it, it tells you to look at the tip of your nose and you get headaches. So kindly don't read Bhagavad Gita. And that's why he's an enlightened man, by the way, because he doesn't have headaches. So Deepak Chopra was there. And he says, when Sadhguru said, don't read all these texts, not just Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, no, that's all not necessary. You just do my kriya, you will be enlightened. And that's why I fly on the helicopter. And so on, he was saying. Deepak Chopra said, Sadhguruji, you are a great man. That's why you have this without all these books. Because you have fallen into being. Now, what the hell falling into being means? Nobody. Deepak Chopra doesn't know. Picks up that word vaguely from Heideggerian psychoanalysis, or psychoanalysis choose Heidegger, and tells about falling. And then imagine, there were about 200 Indians who paid a lot of money to listen to this. So I discovered it must be very easy to make money in America, telling this kind of bullshit. Unfortunately, if I wanted to do it, I could have been a billionaire. I could have bought Hari Kirans of the world and put it in my pocket. But unfortunately, I can't bullshit. That's my problem. Anyway, there's a tragedy of Balu's life, but we'll not talk about that. So, what I want to say is, these words, they're not just words. They're not Sanskrit words. They're part of building knowledge, and they've been useful and developed for that. And today, because of colonialism, that's what Chaitra was saying, this knowledge has been damaged in transmission to us. Therefore, we need to understand it. And we can do that if and only if we say it's knowledge and can be tested in exactly the same way we test physics. That is to say, Adhyatma, if it's about human beings and the world, and it's about nothing else, because there is nothing outside the world for us Indians. For Jews there is, for Christians there is, for Muslims there is. God is outside space and time. Unfortunately, Indians said, no, if there is anything, it is in the Iha. If there's anything, it is in the Vishwa. If there's anything, it's in the Jagat. Poor Krishna had to be born here. Ganesha runs around somewhere here. Yeah, Kali flies around eating people here. Not outside space and time, but in space and time. In this world. Not that they exist, but this is how we talk about our gods. This is knowledge about human beings. We live in this world. So if it is knowledge, our Adhyatma must be capable of being tested the way we test physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology. But what they have done is transformed into esoteric stories about super mundane worlds. I don't know what the hell nobody knows what it is. I don't know what a super mundane world is, a sub-mundane world is. I don't know where the hell they are. I don't know how to accept them. But Indians are supposed to have done that. And of course, therefore, they say, my last sentence, only special people get the super mundane knowledge. Yeah, you have to do sadhana for 30 years. Almost every second NRI I met in America is a sadhaka. He has some guru or another. He has been doing sadhana for 20 years. He knows only a fragment of the ocean of knowledge of Indian culture. This is bullshit. This is NRIs in India. Not all of them, some of them. This is not knowledge, people. This is bullshit. Bakwas. So, Indian words, including dharma, it's not some vague word which means everything under the sun, for which you need 200,000 Sanskrit shlokas and still not explain what it means. They're part of a theory about human beings, about society, about culture, about psychology, and so on. This is what we have lost, and this is where we have to go. So don't think you understand what Advaita is, Adharma is. So we understand neither our culture, nor the languages we use, nor do we understand English or Western culture. But the pretension is we understand both, and that's a tragedy. Anybody would like to add something to that? Otherwise, I keep on preaching. I'd like to warn something which I warn everybody. You know, Indians believe in reincarnation. I have been born, I don't know, the last time I counted 1,735,522 births I have had. No, really, truly, I did a certain serious counting, Scientists mean you must count, no, quantify. So I quantified it. Anyway, one thing I discovered is that I was born as a priest in one of my previous births. Because of which I have a tendency to preach, as you're noticing. When I start talking, I don't stop. Now, it has nothing to do with me. It is the Purajanma Vasana. It's a Prarabdha Karma that has come from my previous births. And there are interesting stories. I was also Rasputin, by the way. Yeah. And Jesus Christ also. I got crucified. And I tell the Christians they're deeply shocked. But when I tell them that is indeed because Indians believe in previous birth, reincarnation, I was reincarnated on Jesus, and I give them an advice. Kindly don't get crucified. It is a very painful process. So then they don't know what to do, whether they should take me seriously, send me to a mental hospital, or am I ridiculing them? I'm giving this to you as kind of tricks you can use. Do Indians believe in reincarnation? Yes, yes, yes. You see, I was a headless chicken in my last birth. I would not advise you because it's a very painful process. And you say that, don't ask any more about rebirth. So come back. They don't understand Indian culture. We don't have access to Indian knowledge. We don't understand Western culture. And they have no knowledge about human beings in society of the kind that we require today. So the first thing that we must learn is accept our jnana. It's a precondition to knowledge. If you don't know that you don't know, you won't learn. And the most fundamental lesson of 40 years of my research has been there is lots we don't know. You see what I mean by being a priest? I'm trying to save your souls. Yeah. I have been asked by a Roman Catholic Church to, for a certain commission to change souls in India, which is exactly what I'm doing. $1 per soul. That's a lot of money, if you think of 1.6 billion people. I get $1.6 billion, yeah.
Joke. It's a joke.
It's not.
Not everybody understands his joke, but this one was a joke.
Oh. All right. With such daughters, who needs enemies? All right. Next question. Or would somebody like to say something? For some time, I'll keep quiet.
Perhaps I can say something. This question keeps coming back, both in the list we got and now, is the asking for kind of practical instructions. How then do we study our traditions? How then do we access our traditions? And the sense I get, what's very important is first to learn how not to do it, and first to become aware that the different routes that have been followed during the last, 200, 300 years, that they keep being repeated again and again. And there's a question that I had. Someone here raised an issue. Asked, there's a number of people who are now telling us that we should go back to Sanskrit categories because that's our only way to protect us from colonial consciousness and to get out of this colonial discourse about ourselves. It reminded me very much of what these theosophists and others said, that we need to turn to Sanskrit categories to escape from the ignorance we're in. Now, the problem, of course, was that these theosophists didn't know Sanskrit at all. And from what I hear, the same is the case for the people who are now preaching that we should go back to Sanskrit categories to protect us from colonial consciousness. Now, the question that comes up to me is, when you're ignorant of Sanskrit and you claim this is knowledge of Sanskrit is our only way to protect us from colonial consciousness, that means you have to be in colonial consciousness because you don't have what could protect you from colonial consciousness. But in that case, the entire proposal to turn back to Sanskrit categories must be an expression of colonial consciousness because it's raised in ignorance of Sanskrit. So I don't, is the problem clear?
No, it's not. A bit confusing. Anybody helping?
See, I mean, let me try taking the step.
Somebody says amazing paradox explained by Jacob, so they understood it.
Oh,
Then we don't need to.
Jacob, you have an admirer. Ajay Sudha, something or the other. Wow. I told you, you came here to take students and become their doctor. You see, conspiracy of all these white people. Yeah, yeah, go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I mean, if it is understood, but I will take one element. There are two parts of the story. See, because there is this standard talk that you keep hearing with large number of people and people who are more interested in Sanskrit than some who know Sanskrit, that one could simply go back and read text prior to colonialism and get access to Indian culture. And as though you take those texts like Bhagavad Gita, you go and put your hand and you read it and you get it completely, and then you get this pure Indian culture that is available to you, and you skip the colonial consciousness or the impact of colonialism on you. This is one part. Now that I will probably leave it to Balu, but there is an also other part. The other part is that there is this association between knowledge and the language. So there is this claim which is either implicit and many a times explicit, that if you don't know Sanskrit, it is not possible to have knowledge about India. So Sanskrit is some kind of a precondition without which there is no way that you're going to get access to what is being said in Upanishad, what is being said in Bhagavad Gita. It is not possible. Therefore, I mean, in any way, you are not going to get jnana, so no moksha for you, as if that is where it is moving. Now take that from the conversations that we have built from the morning, that if it is knowledge and the way you understand, you test, you use criteria to think and develop knowledge, if you apply it to Indian knowledge also, it should fulfill the same condition. And if you keep this as the background, let's go back to physics. Let's assume that, you see, today we know physics, biology, etc. These texts are written in English. Today, the language of science has become English, right? Now, there are large number of people in India. For example, India has highest number of English literature people, English literature graduates in India. And just because it is written in English, do you think that these English literature people can read quantum physics or read some evolutionary theory? It is impossible. If we talk about such an idea that English literature people, by the sheer fact that they know the language, and you give them, Feynman physics or any other textbook, it is hilarious. We start laughing at it. What kind of a ridiculous idea it is. But now come back to think about Sanskrita and the knowledge that Indians have produced. Now look at the claim, if you don't know Sanskrita, there is no way that you're going to access that knowledge. But nobody had told me that for physics and biology, because many a time, see, I came from Kannada medium school, and when I was studying, I didn't have good spoken English. My English grammar had terrific problems, etc. But nothing stopped me in doing the science. Nothing stopped me in publishing and conducting my experiment. I could access the knowledge. Yeah, over a period of time, the difficulties of English could overcome, but it was not even necessary to have my English language is not flowery, vocabulary is not rich. Yet I can grasp the knowledge and do what I want to. But you just reverse the situation here, that if you don't know Sanskrita, you cannot have knowledge that Indians have produced. Now there is something very peculiar that we have built, as if Sanskrita is the only way of articulating the knowledge that has been produced in India. And if that were to be the argument, this cannot be the case for knowledge. And if we take it seriously that Indians have produced knowledge, whether somebody knows Sanskrita or not, there should be ways in which we will be able to access such a knowledge. Yeah, it is very trivial to say that, yeah, if I have to understand physics, you need to have some kind of a development of how to deal with English language. In the same way, we also need to have some idea of how to deal with Sanskrita. But this equation that people have, only Sanskritists have that knowledge and others don't have, becomes a very peculiar kind of a claim.
There is something else. There's a paradox behind it, if you look a bit carefully. There is a Colombian law Sanskrit professor called Sheldon Pollock. And the Sheldon Pollock, what this bugger says, what this great man says, is that Sanskrit was sacerdotal language, restricted to Brahmins, which of course was not given to the Shudras. Pollock is not the only one who says it. Okay, any number of people make a huge living by telling that story. How Brahmins prevented teaching Sanskrit and therefore the Vedas to the depressed classes in India for 2000 years. Now they want to, it's payback time. Fine. The people who attacked Sri Sheldon Pollock, there is a group who doing something called Swadeshi Indology. Nice people, very, very, very committed people. So I'm not criticizing them as individuals at all. They are saying exactly the same thing. We need Sanskrit to teach these knowledges to people. That is, if you want to learn about Indian knowledge, you have to learn Sanskrit. Pollock is saying exactly the same thing to demolish India. People who are making these backward classes, etc., saying the same thing to demolish India. Question is this: how is it possible that one and the same fact, namely, Sanskrit is required to access Indian knowledge, is used to attack India, 2000 years of injustice, and the same thing is used, same argument is used by Swadeshi Indology, whatever that might mean, to build Swadeshi Indology against Western Indology. Something is wrong with this. If one say one and the same conclusion gives you one and the same premise, leads you to two contradictory conclusions. High school geometry, they called it reductio ad absurdum. That is, if you take a premise, you can derive contradictory conclusions. Your premise is wrong. Sheldon Pollock has millions of dollars from Narayan Murthy to tell the story. Swadeshi Indology and all this depressed classes get billions from Indian government to tell the story. But geometry tells us that is reductio ad absurdum. How the hell do we understand that? How is it possible we want to build Swadeshi Indology on exactly the same thing? But there's something even far more interesting. Just one small example from the same Sheldon Pollock. All right, how do you know? The question comes that Sanskrit was limited to Brahmins, sacerdotal Brahmins, priestly Brahmins, to cover up knowledge and not teach it to others. How do you know that? Please read his articles. It's interesting. He gives a citation from Valmiki Ramayana, where Hanumanta cites it, is sitting there on top of a tree, and he wants to talk to Sita. So he wants to speak in Sanskrit. And he does not, because he says, if I speak in Sanskrit, she'll think I am Ravana disguised as a Brahmin. Therefore, I shall not speak in Sanskrit. Sheldon Pollock says, you see, here is the proof that Sanskrit was the language of the sacerdotal class of the Brahmin. Hanumanta himself says it in Valmiki. Look, and I'm not interested in any criticism of that. Everybody is deeply ashamed and embarrassed, and they come up with all kinds of stories. But there's a big problem, and problem is this. Hanumanta was a monkey, special monkey, Vanara, okay? So it's not the ordinary monkeys you see in India today or special monkeys. Let's assume that. And let's assume also Hanumanta had the ability to learn languages. That means somebody must have taught Hanumanta Sanskrit. No, otherwise he couldn't have learned. So Indians are willing to teach monkeys Sanskrit. Bloody hell, they would have been prepared also to teach other people from other classes also Sanskrit. Why would they say only special monkeys will get Sanskrit, special Brahmins will get Sanskrit, all other people don't have? I mean, it's ridiculous because we have no evidence for that. So, the very evidence that Sheldon Pollock brings you undercuts completely. You can draw absolutely the opposite conclusion that in India, Brahmins taught the monkeys and crocodiles and the crows and so on, even mosquitoes, Sanskrit, but they did not want to teach it to people, other people, because they were sacerdotal, ritual, specialized language. I wonder how the hell mosquito figured out, can understand all these sacerdotal priests teaching ritualized Sanskrit. Anyway, apparently it happened according to Sheldon Pollock. This is the kind of stories that float around, which nobody would take it seriously. Again, a reduction absurd. His evidence is counter evidence. But nobody, not one single person that I have read, raises these kind of issues. So they say Indology, not at all, but they hate Sheldon Pollock. They want to bury the burger as quickly as possible. I read one volume on, so I did not read it. I just looked at it because I don't read such books. So they say Indology, there are some 3 volumes or 4 volumes or 5 volumes. I don't know how many there are. The first volume was all about how Sheldon Pollock is an ass. But please, look at what you are assuming. Please look at the conclusions you're drawing. Please look at the evidence there is. Why is it they don't do like this? Not because they're not intelligent people or committed people or genuine people. They're all that. Really, really appreciate what they're doing. But why they are failing is because they don't realize they are dealing with knowledge. It's as though it is some kind of a novel. Literary theorists, what do? They pick up a novel and bullshit their way. The better bullshitter you are, the greater literary critic you are. And you get Jnanapith awards in India. India is a fantastic country. The kind of awards it gives to what kind of people is amazing. You must do a scientific study about it. So anyway, so if you write such things, you get Jnanapith award. So that is what these people do. Go to Ramayana, go to Mahabharata, read it as some kind of a literary text, and bullshit and bullshit and bullshit. There are 10 levels of meaning in Mahabharata. Wow. How the hell did this guy know? Because he says there are 10 levels. Veda has got 3 levels of meaning. Adhyatmika, the Daivika, the Bhautika. And who knows it? Only Aurobindo knows it. How the hell did he know it? You see, he's a special creature. And I, as a follower of Aurobindo, I'm doing deep sadhana. So 25 years down the line, I'll also be an Aurobindo. And this is a nice goal to have, people. But this won't bring knowledge about Veda at all, or about Ramayana, or about Mahabharata. So when we read, when we do work on Indian texts, keep in mind, we have to follow, because it is knowledge, strict criteria that we would use to test knowledge.